Nas Kuzangpula, we're going to be bringing you a short interview with the People's Democratic Party, and with me I have Mr. Dorji, the Vice President of the People's Democratic Party. Thank you for giving us your time. Now, let me just start off by asking you, why should people vote for PDP?
First of all, I'd like to thank you, Rabde, for giving me this uh, chance to come to your studio at BBS.
It's a pleasure to have you, sir.
Thank you. PDP was the first party to be established in 2007, and PDP was the first party to contest against DPT in the 2008 elections. And PDP, despite its defeat in the 2008 elections, was able to form the opposition in the parliament. So we, during these 5 years, we have been in the parliament. We have seen how the government is run. We have debated with the cabinet, we have debated with the members, and we have criticized the government on so many occasions when we felt that the government was not doing its duty, its responsibilities as per the constitution, when we felt the government's policies were not in the interest of the country and the people, and when we felt that the government had to make corrections and take remedial measures.
Nasla. Now, talking about when you're talking about the corrections and opposition which you all had to the thing, the PDP has actually been criticized for just opposing just for the sake of it several times. And what would the PDP do differently if you all get in the parliament this time?
Well, I think any opposition party that comes into the parliament as opposition is duty bound to criticize. Now, whether to take that criticism constructively or whether to take it as opposing for the sake of opposing, it should be left to the judgment of the people.
Yes.
But from our part, we have genuinely and with the best of intentions made our remarks, gave our opinions, and criticized the government, but in a very constructive way. I don't remember any instances where we, oppose the government just for the sake of opposing. In fact, we have been on several occasions been attacked by the members of the ruling party just for criticizing the government, even with the best of intentions.
What is the People's Democratic Party's stand on the Bhutanese economy?
Well, I would say the Bhutanese economy is going through rough waters. When we started in 2008, I think with regard to almost anything, we had the best possible scenario for a very thriving and vibrant democracy. His Majesty the Kings have secured the sovereignty and security of the country. It was the most peaceful time of our life. The economy was at its height. For instance, the GDP growth in 2000, as of January 2008, was 17.9. Inflation was very low, around 4.7, and then the national debt was almost negligible. We had a little bit of surplus over the trade trade balance of trade. So I mean, all in all, it was the best of times, and then it was handed over to the new government, to the new elected government. 5 years later, we have a host of problems at our hands. First and foremost, there is an urgent need to strengthen democracy. Secondly, we have a huge national debt at our doorstep. Now we are talking of about 82 billion national debt, which is further compounded by the rupee crisis. And presently we have more than 17 billion rupee crisis on overdraft facilities. And these are very short-term credit.
Yes.
And the interest rate is very high. For instance, from PNB, the interest rate was 10.5. SBI was 9.75. And then we have the nagging unemployment problem. and that has um, affected our youth.
Yes.
They are becoming disillusioned now.
Yes.
The government has not been able to bring down the rate of unemployment.
Yes.
It was 3.1 in 2007 and still 3.1 in 2013.
Nasla. Now you've talked about a host of problems which have been created in these past 5 years, let's say, but let's just say that Bhutan has a challenge ahead. Now, how is the PDP going to deal with this challenge?
Well, each problem has its own peculiarities. So we have to see the reasons and the sources behind these problems. And PDP has a manifesto for this election, and we have all the basic measures that we will be taking to resolve each of these problems. Now, for instance, talking about the rupee crisis, we'll have to take monetary measures, we'll have to take fiscal measures, which will not be pleasant for all of us. The rupee crisis is going to haunt us for the next 10 years. And we'll have to come out with so many measures so as to attack the root cause of the rupee outflow.
Yes.
And with unemployment, we'll have to come out with very bold measures. For instance, now PDP, we will come out with schemes like guaranteed employment for all, or for our youth. Schemes like unemployment benefits for our youth. Now we have to take bold measures.
Yes.
This is affecting our youth. Crime rate is going up. People are becoming more and more depressed. If you look at the health records, the most common problem, health problem, is mental disorder, and especially depression,
Yes.
and especially among the youth. And now the reason for all this is because you're not getting employed. You're not able to sustain yourself. So all these problems we'll have to tackle.
Yes.
And it's not going to be an easy task
Yes.
for any government.
Yes. Yes. Obviously, when you talk about guaranteed jobs for youth and youth benefits for unemployed youth, how realistic is that actually?
Well,
realistic?
it's not a new concept. In almost every country in the world, they have this scheme. For instance, the United States, they have this scheme also.
Can we afford it? We're not as
It's not the
rich
question
as
of
the United States.
no, it's not the question of affording. It's a question of political will.
Yes.
If there is a will, there will be a way.
Yes.
And we are not talking of millions of unemployed people. We are just talking of 6,000 unemployed people.
Yes.
And out of that, we are talking of, about 2,000 to 3,000 youth.
Yes.
So, what is needed is a political will.
Nasla. So main thing is political will.
Yes.
Nasla. Now I'd like to ask you all about. I would like to ask you about the People's Democratic Party's foreign policy.
Well, I think under the enlightened leadership of our succeeding monarchs, and in particular His Majesty the Fourth and the Fifth Kings, we have done exceedingly well when it comes to foreign policy. And it is, for us, it is to follow the path that was crafted by our enlightened leaders. We have very strong relations with India, and we have to strengthen that further. We should also strengthen our relations with our immediate neighbors and with countries in the SAARC region. And then, of course, we have to keep on strengthening our relations with those countries, donor countries in particular, who have been with Bhutan all through these tough years and long years. We should play a definite role in the international arena, but with caution. We should make as many friends as possible in the world, but being mindful of our limited resources. So we can't just afford to make friends with countries which do not have a benefit for us, and for whom we also cannot offer any constructive benefits.
Now moving on with our discussion, let's talk a little bit about PDP's leadership. does PDP have a leadership crisis right now?
Well, it all depends upon how you interpret it. I mean, if you can consider me as a leader, and if you consider opposition leader of the opposition as a leader, then we don't have a leadership crisis. La.
Yes. Yes.
So, I mean, it is how people look at you. So if anybody, any candidate in our party, despite having all these qualities, if people think we can't do it, then I mean it is up to the people. But mind you, we have people who can be excellent leaders in our party.
Nice, nice. Well, I'd like to ask you also now. What is the main focus of the People's Democratic Party's manifesto?
Our ideology is decentralization and power to the people. So, why we have chosen this ideology? Bhutan has been gifted with a democracy from the Golden Throne in 2008. Democracy does not happen just because there were elections. Actually, democracy is not just about elections. It is what happens after the elections and before the next election. Now, elections you can have in any type of regime. Anybody can conduct elections, but that does not mean that there will be democracy in the country. So, as I said, the ideology is decentralization and power to the people. And when you talk of decentralization, we are talking of devolution of power firstly to the three branches of the government, the judiciary, the executive, and the legislature. So when you talk of power, I'm also talking of administrative as well as financial powers. And then devolution of power to the constitutional offices, to the autonomous agencies, and then to the civil service, and much more important to the local governments. Now, local governments, the independence and the autonomy of the local governments is provided for very extensively in the Constitution. In fact, it is not just autonomy in the administration of the local governments, but even financial autonomy also. Yeah. So, for instance, the Constitution talks about grants, annual grants to the local governments. And the Constitution also talks about the power of the local governments to raise taxes. But have we done all these things in essence? When it comes to governance, we have not changed anything since 2008. Things have been running as it was before. Now, the very concept of democracy is that power should go right to the grassroots. By which I mean the people have to be consulted. The people, you have to have a mechanism whereby the government involves the people fully in the governing and decision-making process.
So this is the main focus of your manifesto.
Yes.
Now, let me just ask you one final question. It's regarding, the Election Commission of Bhutan says that it is the parliament that endorsed the provision for 2 constituencies in Kasala. Now, do you think that was a practical decision, considering that now Kasa has become, a pretty tough place to get candidates from?
Well, if you go back into 2008, initially it was I'm talking of the delimitation process. Yes. Initially, it was proposed that Laya and Lunana will form one constituency, and Khatu and Khami will form another constituency. That was not feasible because of the fact that there were no graduates from Laya and Lunana. So we had to club Laya with Khatu and Lunana with Khami, because we had graduates in Khatu and Khami. Now, after 5 years, we have graduates in Lunana, we have graduates from Laya, and we have graduates from... it is not the question of whether we have enough people. It is a question of whether the system is conducive for people to participate in politics. Now, the core of the problem is the civil service rules and regulations, 2012. And even the rules and regulations before that, and especially the 2012, because you join a party and register with a party, which means for 3 years you cannot join the civil service. Now, supposing I have never been in the civil service, but I want to join the civil service, I cannot do it for 3 years now.
No.
Now you talk of fresh graduates now. They can't take part in politics because you can't even appear for the RCC exam. You forget about joining the civil service. You can't even appear for the RCC exam. These things are not conducive. And then
Yes.
the civil service, they are supposed to be apolitical, and we have the best of the best in the civil service, but they have to leave their job in order to join politics. And to join politics means there is no guarantee that you will win. In fact, if there are 5 parties or 4 parties as of now, only 2 parties are going to get through. So what happens to the people who have sacrificed everything to join the other 3 parties?
So basically what you're saying is that it's not really a problem that the 2 constituencies were, the 2 demarcation when it was done, the 2 constituencies were put in place, but it is actually a problem with the system.
Yes, yes.
Well, I'd like to thank you so much for your time, Mr. Damchoe.
Thank you.
That was Damchoe Dorji, the Vice President of the People's Democratic Party, joining us here. Thank you for joining us.